morning, and today I am here with Paulina Tenner.
Yes.
An entrepreneur, speaker, and author. And it's actually a very funny story how I got to know about Paulina. I went to the Speaker Express. You don't know the story yet. I went to the Speaker Express.
Oh, run by Annie, who's one of my best friends, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I recorded a podcast show with her last week.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm not sure which order this is going to be in, but definitely whoever's listening will get a fair idea of the lovely Annick. And she was talking about, she mentioned you. I can't remember in what context, but she mentioned you.
Probably that I'm the crazy witchy bitch and you must meet me or something of that kind.
Something along those lines. She was using you as an example of someone who just goes on stage and just vibrant with energy.
Yeah.
And just owns the stage and owns the room. And I'm like, wow, it's incredible to meet people like that. And then she told us about your upcoming book.
Oh, yay.
And yes, if you've got children in the room, please ask them to leave right now. I'll give you a couple of minutes because there will be some foul language on this show. Or, we're trying to unfoul it, as it were.
Absolutely, reclaim it.
Yes, absolutely.
So the book is called Kant in the Workplace. That was the working title. It may change to what the business leader learned from the stripper, which is after my TEDx talk, which actually was quite successful. So I'm still kind of teetering on the edge of which one is it going to be.
Fantastic.
But I'm a big fan of Kant as well. It's primal. It's beautiful. That's where we all come from.
Yeah.
And I find it absolutely incredible that the source of feminine power really has become the most obscene word in the English language. It's almost like for me, it's almost like a symbol of our collective hatred or fear of the feminine power, which is why I long to reclaim it.
What a mission you're on, really.
Absolutely. I'm on a mission. Create a possibility.
We'll talk about that in just a minute. And the reason why I just also caught my attention, not just because of the title, but because in recent years, I also came up with the title for a possible book, but I've been told that it wouldn't be appropriate. Uncunt Yourself.
Yes.
But I was focusing more on the whole, I suppose, the masculine interpretation of it.
Yeah.
Rather than trying, like yourself, reclaim the feminine energy of it.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I meant to basically cut out the negative energy in your life.
Yeah.
And I suppose what you're trying to do is actually do the higher thing, which is cleanse and detox the negativity from the word itself.
Yeah.
And just going back to the basics of what it actually means. It's easy to forget that it's synonymous with womb and uterus, that beautiful place where life is born and nurtured and
and like one of my tantric teachers says, the only temple where life can be conceived and born. So the only temple in the world, the womb, where life gets conceived and
what a beautiful
birthed
metaphor.
out of. So why be ashamed of that?
And why degrade it?
Yeah. And even, you can say, it's so funny because you can say, oh, what a dickhead. But when you say, what a cunt,
it's more powerful, isn't it?
Yes. And I think there is actually a primal power in it. And I think there is a way of just facing and keeping that primal power while reclaiming that word as a positive word, as a powerful word. Yeah,
I can feel the power of it just by hearing you talk about it. It makes me realise that, yes, if you just really go back down to basics, purifying it from all the other blemishes, there is extreme power in owning that word. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, in case you didn't figure out what Paulina's genius is, tell me in your own words, what do you feel your genius is?
Beautiful that you introduced me as, that Annick said that I shine on stage and claim my space and whatever. Like I mentioned to you, I recently had a bit of a kind of low energy period, and there was this one particular day, I think a couple of weeks ago, where I had to be on a panel. And usually I'm super looking forward to these events. This was actually a really interesting event. Is hierarchy dead in business? Because I created a company where, just briefly, all financials are transparent and there is no hierarchy. There's a different structure called holacracy, and people are responsible for setting their own salaries.
Yes,
so that's kind of
I
my
was hoping
background.
that you're going to talk about that.
maybe I'll dive into it a little bit more. So
yeah.
so because of that, I was invited on that panel. But that particular day, you know, one of those days when you're like, why today? Like, I just wish I got in from the office quickly to, you know, make myself ready. And it was one of those when I was like, I wish I could just stay home and crawl into bed with a book and, you know, one of those. And then, but I got myself out, obviously, slapped some makeup on quickly and rolled up at that event.
Created the possibility.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I'm sitting there, kind of some small talk with the people that are arriving, and I'm still kind of dreading it a little bit. And it's like, of course I'm going to get through that. I've done multitude of talks on TEDx stage, on different conferences. It's going to be fun. It's going to be good. Okay. But what actually happened is that the moment I was on stage with two people, and both of them were way more senior than me. So one of them was a woman who spent 20 years, I think, at Vodafone, and she is some kind of culture change manager type of person.
Right.
And a guy who is, I think, even more senior in a corporation called Energy, and he's kind of worked with agile teams. And the moment the conversation started, and it was a relatively small audience, maybe like 20-25 people, like boom, I was so there. I was so in flow. I was sharp. I could feel, and this is just the best feeling ever, that I think what genius really means to me, when I sort of lose myself as I know myself. Yeah. And I become the way I see it sometimes in meditation is like an open door, or like a conduit from a different higher energy to kind of flow through. And the more I open myself, and the more I forget myself in a way, the wider a tool or a conduit I become for something to flow through. And it was just beautiful. And I've had talks, and I've had events, and I've had moments when I was also performing burlesque a few years ago, when that happened, when I just felt like I'm losing myself now. I'm like, it's no longer even an issue whether I look good, whether I sound good, whether like what people think, like all of that is gone, and it's just power flowing through, and that's,
you're just a vessel.
I'd like to think so. So that particular event, I was still kind of in, I could feel both. I could feel, okay, this is the self, and I can feel like, oh, I'm doing well, and here's the energy. But in some extreme cases in the past, I've had moments when I felt like the notion of me is actually kind of gone and dissolved, and I'm a pure kind of vessel, like you say. And those moments are the moments that I live for. It's just stunning.
I think also to get to that point, there has to be certain things in alignment.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you lose your sense of self. You're no longer in the I. Your ego
steps to the side. Yeah.
And you become one with everyone and everything around you.
Yeah.
But also, it's an alignment with your passion.
Yeah.
What it is that you're talking about.
True.
And it's that passion, I think, that grain, that's the moment of genius.
Yeah, it has to be, because what I was talking about is hierarchy dead is actually very, very relevant to me and something very close to my heart. So the way I responded to that question point blank was like, I'm not sure hierarchy was ever actually alive because while you have this like org chart, people talk to one another. Information never flows just from upwards, downwards. Again, I could talk about this for a long time, but I really believe that there's a much better way of managing ourselves and our work as people and as organizations. So it was something that I was quite passionate about, definitely, and something that I've devoted the last 9 years to building a company to prove to our industry, which is financial services, that something quite different is possible. And I'm super glad that we kind of got to that place where we are financially very successful and it works. And I can say to people, it's not just a hippie idea. Look at our bottom line. It works.
I want really to pick your brain on this, Because financial industry and money and economy, such a heavy, what am I trying to say? It's a loaded concept, because let's face it, our economy is in a dire state. Our, the social inequality has, I think, reached extreme points. Where you've got really extreme wealth on one side of the spectrum, owned by 1% or 2%. You've got some really dire states on the other side.
And you can see it even in London. Some very upmarket areas are next to places where people live on social benefits and barely make ends meet. So in a city of London like this, it's very, very evident.
Absolutely. And the current government claims that actually unemployment is at its lowest it's ever been, which may be true, but it's because many people now are having to do multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. So it's a kind of a false statistic, really. But what you are proposing is something quite disruptive. And I can imagine there are lots of people on very large thrones who would look at your model and think, no way, because it disrupts the hierarchy, which actually they're benefiting from. Tell us a bit more about that hierarchy. How did you design it? How did you come up with it?
Yeah, sure. So I have to give a lot of credit to my business partner and my other half in life, who I started the business with, and who was probably the moving force behind creating something different. So what we knew at the very beginning is that we wanted to create a kind of company where we would want to work in if we were looking for a job. But whilst I was more, especially at the very beginning of a business, focused on like really making it work commercially, getting those first clients in, he was already thinking, okay, what will this company look like in 5-10 years? And it slowly became apparent to us that we didn't want to have reporting lines, that we didn't want to have managers. We were at that time very, very early on in the business's history coached by somebody who came from a corporate world, and he was like, okay, so you need to start thinking like, what's your organization chart going to look like, and who is underneath whom? And we were like, we kind of, our hearts sank, and we were like, we actually, that's why we came out of our previous jobs, not to have that. And just to say, hierarchy in itself, it's a bit of a kind of bad word with a bad reputation, but it can be useful as long as we're using it within, so for example, within a certain project and within a certain team, and the governance and organizational structure called holacracy that we use as a company has that. So you have so-called circles, which are effectively departments or groups of people united together to deliver a particular project. Within those circles, hierarchy is important. It's just that this is a hierarchy of roles and not of people. So in one circle, I might have quite an important role, so I might be quite, relatively up in the hierarchy, but in the other project, I'm just helping out. So I'm, very low in the food chain. So it doesn't, plus it's not about me, it's about, is the role I'm holding important enough in this project to have more power than others, but other roles, not other people. So that's a very, very important things to distinguish, that I really don't believe in hierarchy of people. I believe in hierarchy of work, because in every project there's more important work and less important work. But still, within the structure that we have, nobody has power to tell somebody else what to do. There is within every circle, there is a role called lead link, and that person can set priorities for the circle and for the project, and just ask people, okay, I'm asking you to prioritize this, so that it's in line with the overall purpose of the company and what we're doing at the moment. But I can't approach you and say, I can approach you and give you feedback and say, my work is stalling, for example, because of something that you said you would deliver and you didn't. And this is actually very important that those conversations are happening. But I can't approach you as a boss or as a manager and say, you do this now for me. Like there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a boss or a manager. everybody is their own manager. So we're asking people to complete self-assessments every month. We're asking people to take about 10% of their time as their employed time to do their own management of their own career as well. To, for example, check, we actually encouraging people to talk to recruiters. Are they at the moment in the best position they could be in the company? Are they being paid fairly, or should they, perhaps ask for a higher salary? And there is again a process to follow there. So that whole curating your experience within the company and your career within a company is something that your manager would normally do. We ask people to do that for themselves. So it requires very particular type of person who is able to engage with that and take on that responsibility. So we've got quite an elaborate recruitment process, etc. But it works, and it can work, and it does work. And in our journey, we've been inspired by tons of books, articles, and stories of other founders that have implemented different open culture principles also in much, much, much bigger companies of tens of thousands of people. So it's not just for startups. It's just a different way of thinking about organizations, which I think is coming in. It's just creeping in through, we talk about self-managing teams, so we talk about agile. So more and more companies are bringing subtly, slowly but surely, are bringing those open culture principles in. And the new generation, the Gen Zs, or as whatever they're called, are looking... but they're looking for workplaces like that, when they can be in their mastery, where they have authority. So my little theory is that while startups are incubators of social change, this kind of change is creeping into bigger companies already, because they can't afford not to create wholesome workplaces if they want to have the best talent.
That's amazing. And it gives me so much hope, actually, because you're right. It's the current model has shown over and over again that it's not working. But I'm really curious to know more. So you've taken out the power element. And you've basically said that everyone is equal in terms of power. So there isn't that conflict, that internal conflict.
Which is usually created, by the way, in bigger companies by access, or like lack of access to information. So for us, all the information is accessible. Financial information, all the information is accessible to anyone.
Wow.
So that usually creates a power imbalance in politics. And we've kind of removed that. So
I can only imagine what kind of environment that will then create in terms of enabling people to free up their mind from all the detox that creeps up in environments where there is internal conflict and power conflict and so on. But now they've actually got more space to think and be creative. And give more of who they are and give more of their genius as well.
Absolutely. So it's like, we've just hit on something where my whole heart and my body is like, yay! Because I'm a massive believer in human potential, and I'm a massive believer that with all of the social inequality, like you mentioned, social inequalities, obviously our planet is in a dire state. We have massive, civilizational crisis to deal with in terms of inequalities, in terms of climate change and poverty and all sorts of things. But I believe that if we really tapped into human potential globally, there's more than enough to solve all of these problems. It's just a question of how do we, first of all, obviously individually, and I believe that you're doing that by doing this video cast and tapping into it. But like, first of all, individually tapping into our genius and our power, and then creating structures, and that's what we try to do in my company, to help people tap into their own genius as much as possible. And the more we do this, and the more we wake up and actually really tap into what it is that what's our shining, what's our inner, soul shine.
What can we give the world? What are we capable of?
Then,
and it's limitless.
Absolutely. Then I think that globally there is more than enough talent and potential to solve all the challenges that we have. It's hard to believe, even as I say it, because so many things feel like we are on the brink of a disaster, and it's so easy to get depressed, like reading climate change reports.
But this is the conflict that we're talking about. As long as you've got hierarchy of power, you're always going to get those disasters and the bad news. It thrives on it. This kind of the system that we're living in right now, the status quo, thrives on the bad news and thrives on amplifying how everything is not working, rather than focusing.
It's kind of the fear mindset as opposed to the abundance mindset.
Exactly, and the scarcity mindset. The immigrants are here to take your food and your jobs and so on.
And who's going to save you? Donald Trump. We'll
even better, Boris Johnson.
But like who we elect is again based on how those campaigns are created. It's based on tapping into fear and anger that's present in people, as opposed to a sense of abundance and shine and power that's in. Because if we were to tap into that, we would, I don't know who we would elect. Bloody hell, we'd probably elect ourselves. We would elect ourselves into whatever it is.
We would actually not. I believe that we wouldn't even need a government. We wouldn't need something centralized.
Yeah.
And I think the world is moving towards that. I think perhaps not in our lifetime, but perhaps forward thinking. There needs to be a decentralization of some sort in those systems.
I'm a massive believer in decentralization as well. So government as such, I think it's important that there is an organization that kind of brings things together, but how it's organized, I mean, it's definitely not worked very well in the last centuries. And when I look at some big companies, so coming back to the theme of like self-managing teams, etc., there are organizations. There's a fantastic book called Reinventing Organizations that we've learned a lot from, for those of you who are maybe interested in this topic a bit more, where organizations of tens and hundreds of thousands of people are completely decentralized. So there's an organization called Buurtzorg, for example, in the Netherlands, that brings together all the nurses that look after elderly people, and it's a huge organization, and they operate in very small teams, and they're completely decentralized. And it's amazing how it works, and how, because it's designed that way, those nurses get to decide in particular teams how much time they spend with a patient. They like things that are important to them on the grassroots, on the kind of level of the basic, like every day-to-day activity, are not decided by somebody high up who has no idea what it's like to be with an elderly person, but by the people that actually work day in and day out, delivering those services. So it's totally possible. We've also been inspired by a book called Maverick by this guy called Ricardo Semler. He's got a company in Brazil that again is huge and has completely self-managing small units. So maybe our future governments are going to look a bit more like that.
One can only hope. And I'll definitely write a list of all the resources that Paulina is mentioning, and I'll attach it to the podcast. Right, so I want to talk more about your book.
Let's do it. Okay. My book is about leading from a place of integration between the feminine and the masculine principle.
Amazing. My favorite topic.
So, yes, of course, Karen's particularly corporate world is very much driven by the masculine force, but not only the masculine force. What I believe is more a wounded or distorted masculine, because the masculine in his essence, if following Tantra's teachings, masculine is consciousness, feminine is energy or essence. So in his essence, the masculine is a penetrative force. I believe that these days in the corporate world in particular, because startups are slightly different, a lot of things are run from a place of not even a masculine power, but what I would call a distorted or wounded masculine, the kind of masculine that's trying to prove something to somebody. Whereas the masculine in his essence, the masculine is consciousness, there's nothing to prove.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's driven by ego.
Yeah, a lot. You might say that. So it's fear based. It's trying to get somewhere for the sake of something else, and over the bodies of other people very very often. So what I really believe is not just the feminine rising, but the reclaiming of the authentic, wholesome masculine. And we can't, and while we have so much talk about the feminine rising and goddesses and all that, we can't forget that the feminine needs the wholesome masculine in order to thrive. So the two of them have to rise together. And I think things like Me Too movement, fantastic that all of this is coming up. But then again, it might be, the side effect of it is that men are even more afraid very often and confused.
Absolutely.
So how do we bring about the kind of renaissance of the wholesome, healthy masculine energy, which we all have regardless of gender. We are, the fact that we're meeting here together and we're also business women, we have the masculine element there, working there, with the feminine, which is again not the wounded feminine, not the feminine that's raging, and there's obviously healthy rage as well, but not the feminine that's trying to get back at men for something.
Exactly, it's not revenge driven.
Exactly.
Which, funny enough, is also a masculine energy, but I suppose it's because it feels that the feminine energy is too weak or it's not enough.
Yes.
It's dilapidated. There's scarcity there. I think there's scarcity.
Because if you need to get back at someone for something, that's already a scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah.
Not to say that Me Too movement hasn't been very useful. I think all those stories needed to come out. Absolutely. But right now that we're moving out of that wave, the question is, what are we moving into? And that's why I think it's probably the right timing for this book.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Yay!
And I couldn't agree with you more. And this is maybe something that I've battled with in recent years with feminism. I used to be the UK coordinator for Egyptian women, the Union for Egyptian Women.
Oh, wow.
In Egypt. And I left it because I got really, I started becoming quite uncomfortable with what it was standing for. And it wasn't just that union, it was all, or at least the ones I knew, the movements at the time. Yeah. It was a time of a lot of anger. It was before Me Too came out. Yeah. So there was a brewing anger building up to the Me Too movement. Yeah. But I felt, okay, so what's next? Yeah. All this anger is not right for us. It's not the right energy that it's necessary, yes, but it's not, it cannot be anger for the sake of being angry. Yeah. It's time we did something with that energy that would actually be productive. And I felt that the first thing that we actually need to do, we need to bring in the masculine. Yeah. Educate the masculine. Yeah. And actually release the masculine. Free him.
Give him space, because the masculine can only thrive when he is given space. We've seen so many examples, and I think in some relationships it's evident that the masculine is kind of squashed under the big feminine, and masculine needs to be given space to do his thing, because masculine loves doing his thing, penetrating the world with consciousness, improving something, getting a job done. I think that masculine needs that space. Definitely. From the feminine. Space and a sort of like trust, and just like we need adoration, I think masculine also needs space, trust and adoration from the feminine. I trust you to do your thing. Yes. To really do your thing.
And then hopefully also nurturing them and guiding them towards doing the same for women. So also giving them trust. Yeah. To do their thing. Yeah. And somehow mesh the energies. We need to bring it into balance.
Yes. And that's what the book is about. So I actually introduce my inner feminine and masculine characters. The masculine is called Bob, and it came out in a shamanic ritual that I did with a couple of friends. And the feminine character is called Freya, after a Norse goddess. And there's also a voice of fear, since we say, there's a lot of fear in us and collectively. Mine is called Ferdinand the Great. So after some chapters where I talk quite a lot about my company and my thinking, there is a bit of a dialogue or some thoughts that Bob, the masculine, might have on a given topic, or for example there being a lot of suicides among men. and how he feels about it. And then there might be a chapter about surrender, and Freya talks about how she feels about that. And then there might be a little dialogue between Bob and Ferdinand, like where Ferdinand feels like it's all falling apart. It's all, dog eat dog. We need to be, because that voice is within me still, and I need to acknowledge it. I cannot heal if I'm not ready to acknowledge I still have fear-based thoughts and beliefs, and the fear creeps in all the time. And it's trying to say, oh, if you don't really try to get control here, you're going to die. You're going to be eaten by, I don't know, others. You're going to be left behind. The world is going to move on and leave you behind. And that voice of fear is there. So I really believed it was important to include it. So I've got those three voices there that also, to a degree, probably represent collective voices of feminine, masculine, and fear.
Yeah. Oh, that's impressive. I really am looking forward to reading that book. I had this image come up in my mind when you were just talking. I read somewhere that a man's most primal fear is the fear of being laughed at by women. And a woman's most primal fear is to be killed by a man. But I also know that as a woman and for women, when we look at men, and I certainly feel that way because I have two wonderful sons. We look at man, yes, we do fear them killing us, but we also look at them as our own creation as well. Yeah. We gave birth to men and women.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We cannot possibly ever, there are men out there who genuinely think women hate them. Yeah. And it breaks my heart when I hear that.
Yeah, there's this movement, Mojito, which is men going their own way. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's men who refuse to date and engage with women in any way. So just like there's like radical feminists, there is a movement amongst men that they feel hurt, they feel sick of dealing with women. They want to have nothing to do with women. So that's present there as well.
And incel, as we know, that movement that created terrorists, and we've had terrorist attacks by them. And we are living in a time where, particularly relationships, which is where people battle out their concepts of the opposite sex, is very treacherous. Yeah. Divorce rates are
skyrocketing.
And people still struggle to understand the opposite sex. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a long time before we settle the whole Venus versus Mars, as it were. What do you think we should do about that? Obviously we are. This is what we've been talking about. But trying to.
I'd say start with ourselves. So start with finding your own feminine and masculine center within. So that's been the start of my journey. So I've engaged with Tantra, actually seriously only a year ago. But this has been one of the elements that has fascinated me the most. So we can see the painting just there in the background with one half of it being a goddess and the other half of it being a god. And this painting is called a tantric marriage, actually.
That's beautiful.
And I think that we can't... It all starts by looking within. And it all starts by recognizing, okay, where is my masculine, where is my feminine? Maybe even giving them names I have. Recognizing when one comes to the fore, or recognizing when the other comes to the fore, recognizing what needs they have. So my woman has the need for adoration. And now it's up to me whether I seek that from the outside world, from the man I'm married to, and blame him how he's not giving me enough, this or that, or whether I work out what's happening in the relationship within my feminine and masculine, where my woman is somehow not getting that from my man, where I'm not giving myself enough acknowledgement and adoration. So there's a lot that we can fix just by kind of tracking what's happening inside between the feminine and masculine. Is my masculine really given space to thrive, to create things? And I form a lot of people, I think he's not. They're stuck in dead-end jobs. Masculine is all about new creative projects, doing things, fixing things, creating a solution for something. So does your masculine really have space to do that? Does your feminine have space to also be creative, to play, to be a space holder, the hostess, to create beauty? Are your needs met in both of those aspects or parts? And I think by embodying, and obviously it's a lifetime journey, but I think a lot can be done just by thinking about it. By embodying place of union where they come together and they really talk to one another, and they meet each other's needs as much as possible. By embodying that, we can bring change into the world.
I completely agree. It's beautiful. And it just made me realise that the other problem that we're having is, where can they actually meet? You see, with the whole dating apps world, and it's I think what it is, I think men really struggle to know, especially after the Me Too movement, and you know, the awakening that's happening. There's a fear. Men fear approaching women. Men fear.
Oh, massively.
There's a lot more fear towards.
They're going to be accused of being predators, right?
Yes. And I don't think we as women are doing enough to educate, or maybe we are, but there's something missing.
Because on one hand, we kind of expect to be approached and expect to be adored, right? And we all crave that. On the other hand, it's like, oh, you just looked at my bum. How dare you? And it's like, because hang on a second, you know.
It confuses men.
Hang on a second. On one hand, we want to be appreciated and adored as women, as, you know, and on the other hand, it's really, really a confusing place. I really feel for men. I really feel, how do you approach women? How do you expect? And I think in the US, it's and I've got a few friends from the US, it's particularly a problem because you cannot even give a woman a compliment these days in the workplace, because even that in itself, a compliment about her looks, can be already a body of proof that you're harassing her. So it's just got into a place where it's ridiculous. Ridiculous. I wouldn't want to live in a society where men aren't or are afraid to compliment me on my looks. Bloody hell. I mean, really.
It will definitely lose an energy of.
I love my body, and I want people to notice it when I wear a nice necklace or whatever. Of course, I do it for myself to begin with, but if we're not allowed to, I said to you that you look fantastic today. You know, if we're not allowed to say that to one another, because we're so terrified that means I actually want to rape you. Oh my God!
Then I think what's essential is creating a space that is safe, and creating a space where trust is there. And in order to cultivate trust, people need to, I suppose, be on the same page. Places, which is, I think, is exactly what your model promotes. It's that equality. A gender equality, a social equality, where even people get to choose how much they get paid. You know, that level of consciousness needs to permeate, needs to be the basics. So in other words, I think your model is not, at the moment it's quite disruptive. But it actually needs to be the rule and not the exception.
And I'm really not trying to say that it's the only way to run a company and it's the best way to run a company. Not at all. It's just one of the ways, and I see it as a movement that we're part of, where companies are and founders are looking to make information more accessible, where there's more transparency, where there's, you know, instead of management by fear and management by just scaring you into performing well, we have the trust that inherently we're wired to do good work. That's what we want to do. And coming from that place, other than coming into the place, listen, if you don't do that, you're not going to get a promotion by XYZ. And if you're not going to get it and your colleagues are going to get it, it's probably going to be an out. And that's how we are, you know, we're managed by scaring people into doing the right things, as opposed to empowering them to find their own center of creativity and mastery to do the things, because naturally we want to do good work. Bloody hell, we don't want to be somewhere and just not care about like it's not sustainable for anyone.
It is, you're right, it's against our human nature, and unfortunately we start conditioning children in school. Throughout my years of teaching in high school, I have to day by day go into work, and all my job was to generate data. In other words, make sure that they are exam munching machines. Forget what you're actually learning, forget how applicable those skills are going to be when you go into the real world. The fact is they're not. But that's not important. What your real talent is not important. What really matters right now is that you pass your exams so that the school looks good. Okay, so that the government looks good. Look at how high we've achieved the record highest results for GCSEs. Therefore, people must be doing well. Therefore, everyone should be happy. Reality shows the opposite. Okay. So, but this is the thing: we are training children from a young age to be competitive, to pour their heart and soul into things and achieving results that actually don't satisfy them. No. That it satisfies the status quo. No. And for years I've been saying that system needs a fundamental change. And we're definitely going in that direction. I think people are finally realising. And that's why you have so many home educating now.
Absolutely. So it's like a sausage making machine to create competitive people that are trying to get ahead of others because they're scared, fundamentally.
Yes. Fear-driven,
So I am actually seeing that change with the new wave of really young people in their early 20s coming into the workplace, where they really are looking for meaning and for a place where they can be in their authority and find their true mastery and find so it's the famous triad that Steve Pinks referred to: mastery, autonomy and purpose. Autonomy is very important to them. So it is changing, and that's why we have more and more workplaces that allow for that, because the new people coming into the workplace are very often scrutinizing those employers and workplaces. Is this really where I want to spend like 3/4 of my kind of waking life? So I can really see that something is happening. That where I get the highest salary is no longer the priority, or how quickly I can get ahead, but can I actually buy into this thing that they're doing here? And by that I mean, do I like the product and what they're selling, but also do I like the culture? Do I like how I know that people are asking some of my candidates that I'm recruiting are asking other people, how are you liking it actually? Like how is it to work here day to day? So I'm kind of seeing a change in young people's mindset as to where they're looking to work and what sacrifices they're prepared to make. That the generation previous to that was more get ahead, get ahead, and at all costs.
Exactly. Right. Compromise who you are, what you stand for, for the sake of money gratification and so on and so forth. You're absolutely right, and it does fill me with so much hope when I see the likes of Greta Thunberg.
Oh yeah! Oh my God,
that
girl.
Generation, that girl and that generation is going to create a dent in the universe. I can tell.
They're already doing it. I've got a guy in my office who's like 21, and the levels of like inner maturity, and it's like I'm just like stunned. I'm like 35 today actually, and
happy birthday.
Thank you very much. It's taken me many years, and I still oftentimes feel like I'm at the beginning of the journey to really come to terms with who I am and develop my inner relationship with myself. And here comes a guy at 21 or 22 perhaps, and it feels as if he's done a lot of the work that I'm doing.
It's amazing.
I just and that makes me believe in collective consciousness as well.
Yes.
That younger people somehow have it quicker and easier, and like that the work you and I are doing is not just for our own sake, but for the sake of kind of collective feel. That things are changing.
It's almost like we are, this collective consciousness is in an awakening stage.
That's exactly what I'm seeing. I'm honestly seeing that. It's not just
we've overlapped into it, we just happen to merge into it in our late 30s or 40s, and they are in the early 20s and they're getting into it. And I
they're
can
getting
see
into
my
it
own
easier.
children
Yeah.
as well. There is definitely something going on in
So I feel like we're kind of in betweeners, like you and I. We're kind of like between this between paradigms. So on one hand, our parents and grandparents, that was all about survival, work hard, get ahead, and that's also the result of the kind of world wars before. And like, okay, let's rebuild this thing. Let's rebuild the world. Capitalism, you know. In between that and a completely different paradigm starting to kick in, which is where, you know, meaning, mastery, truly tapping into your potential, and we're kind of trying to find ourselves and being between those two paradigms. And so it's a kind of fascinating place to be and quite difficult place to be often.
Absolutely. It's definitely if we thought times were interesting before, they're about to get a whole lot more interesting, I think. I firmly believe. And you know, we are the generation where we know life before the internet.
Yes.
And we know life after the internet. And the explosion, like you said.
Yeah.
We've shifted from one paradigm to another, and it was like being sucked into a vortex of something that's just incredible.
Yeah.
Like surreal reality. And the limitless potential of what we can create in this space.
Yeah.
But also the battles we have to keep fighting in order to battle the darkness, as it were.
Yeah.
The forces of fear and so on. And it is our responsibility to highlight the fact that these are coming from a place of fear, and it's time we left that behind. There is nothing to fear. There is plenty, like you said at the beginning. Plenty for everyone. We need to start believing that. And it's also important that to meet ourselves in our places of darkness and fear. So as I said before, it's not something that we can just like, move on, done. It's something that's ingrained within us, and unless we're able to meet that and release that with love and with faith, it's not going to change. Because otherwise it's just this kind of spiritual bypassing that a lot of people engage in as well, where it's like, love, like but also look at what's in you, in your kind of lower chakras, as they would say in kind of spiritual dialect, but what's kind of holding you back, and how those mechanisms are there. So it's not about kind of endless psychoanalysis, but also really being aware of what's stopping you back, and where those dark places and how they're manifesting themselves in your life, and looking at that first, because we cannot heal the collective fear if we're not prepared to look into fearful places in ourselves. Absolutely. Our inner world it will project the outer world.
Yes.
So unless we work on that inner world, we are going to continue producing the same outer world with all its fears and darkness over and over again.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And so what would you suggest that people who are listening right now and they're inspired by what you're saying, because God knows my mind's going what's the first thing people need to start questioning?
Okay, so what's on my mind right now is to actually reveal what we have on our wrists. So we just so Venus has actually inspired me today, even before we started recording. You said that you always, every morning you write on one of your wrists, create a possibility, and on the other, surrender. And to me, this is like an embodiment of like giving the masculine the space to create something, go forth and do something, and giving the feminine space to surrender to what already is. So I love that practice. So like I'm gonna steal it totally.
It's yours.
So maybe it's
anyone else who wants to steal it, you're more than welcome to.
So maybe that's something to begin with. And you don't have to write on your wrist. You can if you do. But like find the feminine and masculine center within you. What are they missing? Has your inner guy been suppressed and not able to really go and penetrate the world with consciousness and do something? Has your feminine been suppressed, as it has been for me for a long time as a businesswoman? I was so in my masculine that my feminine, my playful, creative energy was just squashed. What do they need from each other? How are they communicating? Are they communicating at all? Maybe that's the place to start. And also look for those, just like for me, I'm a bit of a stage whore and I just love it.
You're good at it. You're great.
What are the places where you feel completely in flow? What are the times in your life, could be your working life, could be your personal life. It could even be spending time with friends or children, or where you just feel like time just stops and you become empty and you become a vessel for something else. Or, to put it in less spiritual terms, you're in this state, you're in the zone. You're completely in the zone, and everything around you could be burning to ashes, and you just feel like so in the moment doing this thing that you're doing. And that's when the doing is merged with the being. So you're no longer a human doing, you're a human being doing the thing that really expresses the essence of who you are. So look for those moments, for those times, and let yourself be guided by them.
And create the possibility.
Oh yeah, always.
I'm going to ask you again, because you enlightened me about the whole feminine and masculine right and left side. Yeah. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I tend to see, according to Tantra as well, I tend to see my kind of right side of my body as the masculine, left as more the feminine. So when something, for example, hurts a shoulder or something on my right side, I'd be like, okay, might it be related to something that my inner guy wants or needs, or something that's not being met? Right. So just like we have here, we have her on the left and him on the right. So it's just a way to kind of understand or relate to the inner marriage.
I see. But I loved how you are aligning what you've written on which side. Yeah. So it's about that degree of consciousness and mindfulness. This is how deep we need to think about things, not just superficially. Don't just write it down somewhere.
But it could be a good start. Yeah. Like I honestly feel like I'm at the beginning of that journey also. I'm just really fascinated. So follow your fascinations as well. Like for me, I started studying Tantra a year ago, and this has been this feminine, masculine concept. It's been something that really grabbed my attention. And I could be focused on a variety of other things that those teachings brought me, but like this somehow really stuck. So if something really pulls you, feel the pull, follow the pull of interest, passion. Oh, this thing really grabs me. And it's just given me so much, and it's given me an idea for a book as well. So,
as Joseph Campbell put it, follow your bliss.
Yeah.
This is exactly it.
Or Elizabeth Gilbert, I think she says, like, follow your obsessions, because they've got something to teach you.
Absolutely. And really listen to what your soul is trying to tell you. And if, the whole spiritual talk and talk of soul is too woo for some people. Yeah. There are plenty, all roads lead to Rome. So you can approach it from a completely different perspective. You could approach it from neuroscience. You could call it, rather than call it soul, call it consciousness. Yeah. You don't have to call it God. You could call it the universe. Or the divine principle, or the higher power, or exactly. Yeah. You call it whatever you want to call it. The fact is,
so you feel comfortable with it. Yeah.
But denying it altogether is where the suffering comes from. Yeah. Just pretending that, knowing that there's something there, but pretending that it doesn't matter. Yeah. I think this is where we get lost. Yeah. Pal, I could talk to you for hours, and I probably will. I'm sorry, I'm going to switch this off in a moment, and we probably will talk some more. But I'm sure you have all loved this episode as much as I have.
Yeah, and thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you got something out of it. And if you're interested to learn, to be on the update list about the book, please ping either me or Venus a little message. I'll add you to the list.
And I'll post all your details on the episode details as well.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
Thank you.